There are three things that sell books to readers who have never touched your work before. They are the cover, the blurb, and what other people say about it. Today, in the first video of a series of 3 videos, we are going to break down what makes your cover so vitally important. My name is Seth. I'm a full-time fantasy author. For anybody who's new to this channel, welcome. I like to make videos about being an author and anything else that comes to my mind. We've all heard the expression, don't judge a book by its cover. But the truth is that that's how everybody operates all of the time. In fact, anytime you see anything, your brain immediately starts making judgments. Partially, this is a survival mechanism. If you're out in the middle of the jungle and you're looking around, your brain needs to be able to make decisions about whether that spotted pattern is light falling through the leaves or a jaguar really, really fast. And that mechanism now serves us in helping us make judgments about everything we see. Every time you see something, your brain automatically makes a bunch of decisions about it, and then you operate off of those decisions. Now, obviously, we don't want to be people who look at others and make judgments about them based on the way they look. But when it comes to books, that's how people shop. And as authors, we need to be aware of this. I'm sure you've had this experience. You walk into a bookstore, you're browsing through the selection, you look at a book, and you don't pick it up. Now, I'm sure you've had the opposite experience as well. You do pick it up. But I think it's more illuminating to talk about why you wouldn't pick up a book. And that's going to help us, as authors, design covers that are going to encourage someone to pick up our book, even if they've never read any of our books or don't know who we are. In that split second, when you're browsing in the bookstore and you decide whether to pick up a book or not, your brain is doing a few things. First, it's deciding how relevant that book is going to be to your interests. Second, it's identifying the barrier to entry or how hard it will be for you to enjoy that book. And third, it's deciding what the quality of the writing is inside the book. And you do all of that instinctively in a split second, as does everyone else. As authors, knowing this means that we have to do 3 things with our cover. We have to communicate relevance to our readers. We have to lower the barrier of entry for our reader. And we have to highlight the quality of writing in our book. And if we can do these 3 things, communicate relevance to our readers, lower the barrier to entry, and highlight the quality of the writing, then we have an increased chance that somebody is going to pick up our book and give it a look. So let's walk through these one by one. The first thing we have to do is we have to communicate relevance to our readers. This means that we are trying to say, hey, this book is aligned with your interests, and if you pick it up, you're going to have a positive experience. One of the most frustrating things is for a reader to pick up a book out of the many available, start reading it, and realize that it's not at all what they thought it was going to be. If you promise dystopian and end up giving somebody a cozy mystery, you just lost a fan. And the opposite is true as well. If you promise somebody a sweet romance and it turns into a psychological thriller, chances are that person's not going to read you again. Now, that's not saying that you can't signal to your reader that you have a cross-genre book, and we'll talk about that in a second. But understand that you need to communicate very clearly to your reader the relevance that that book has to their interests. So if you're in multiple genres, that's fine. Just pick the dominant one to represent on your cover. Remember, the goal is to get people to read your books, so we definitely don't want to complicate it. Now, second, we need to lower the barrier to entry. What does that mean? Well, every genre has tropes, and most often those tropes are highlighted on the cover of the book, which is why so many romances have guys without shirts on. They are communicating a specific trope to their reader. It's the same reason that a lot of lit RPG or adventure stories or fantasy stories have swords and dragons on the front, or people fighting. And hard-boiled detective thrillers have somebody looking over their shoulder while holding a gun. Ideally, you want to figure out what tropes your genre specifically uses, and you want to lean into them. Again, we don't want to complicate these things. We want to lower the barrier of entry by identifying the tropes that are in the book to the reader so they can opt in or opt out depending on what they like. And finally, Our cover highlights the quality of our writing. Now, is there a direct correlation between the quality of our writing and a cover? Unfortunately, yes. While it's not always true, it's sort of a commonly accepted truism that people whose covers are not professional writers. Because if you're a professional writer, you'll have a professional cover. Again, not always true. Sometimes great writers don't have a lot of resources and end up doing covers themselves. It's not a great first impression. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a great first impression so that somebody picks our book out of the myriad available. So what I would say is that your cover is really shorthand for how professional you are as a writer. So get help with it. You can go on Fiverr, you can go on Upwork, and you can get covers reasonably cheap. Even if you fancy yourself an artist, don't handicap yourself, because remember, what you think about it is much less important than what your prospective reader thinks about it, because they're the one who's going to be buying the book. You probably already like the book. That's why you published it. They, on the other hand, have to spend their money rolling the dice to see if they like it. All right, so let's get to the practical piece. How do I take these three things and how do I actually apply them? First, know your story. Understand what genres you're writing in. Understand what kind of readers you're trying to target. Second, go to that genre, get the top 100 books, and pick 20 covers from in that range that you really like. Put them together in a doc and start looking for commonalities. Start looking for the tropes visible on the covers that will signal to your readers this is what kind of book it is. And again, if you are in multiple genres, that's totally fine. You can identify the main tropes in your story. You can use those to signal to your reader, this is what kind of story you're going to encounter. And finally, third, please don't do it yourself. Unless you are a professional, make your living as an artist, don't do it yourself. Go on Fiverr, get yourself a cover. $50 to $100 will get you a great cover. In fact, I'll go ahead and link to the cover artist that I used for the Titan series. Her name is Les. She's fantastic to work with. You can take that doc that you just created with all of those different covers to use them as reference for what you're looking for. And you can give that to an artist who can then turn around with your ideas and create something unique. I know sometimes there's this desire to sort of do everything ourselves because it's our art. But again, I cannot stress enough, you are not the person who is buying the book. Your prospective reader is not going to be judging you based on how good you think the book is. They're going to be judging you at a glance against everybody else in that same genre. You are going to be competing with everybody else. And so you need to make sure that your book looks as professional as possible. Now, everyone's got different tastes when it comes to covers, and that's okay. And you don't have to follow convention exactly. I'm not saying that if you wrote a swords and sorcery fantasy and you look at all of the books in that and they all have one kind of cover, that you have to have that kind of cover. The Titan series did very well using a different style of cover than a lot of the other lit RPG and game lit books at the time. But if you look at the cover of, say, book number 1, Nova Terra Titan, you'll see that I kept a bunch of elements and I signaled a bunch of tropes that are relevant to my genre. And then again, I didn't do it myself. This is a professional looking cover. But I'm curious about what sort of covers you like. Drop me a comment with the name of the book that has your favorite cover. I'd love to see what kinds of things that you guys like. And finally, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. You don't want to miss the next video that's coming, because next time we're going to be talking about the next most important thing for selling your book, your blurb.